Welcome to the newly retitled No Comics for Old Men. No Comics for Old Men. No Comics for Old Men. Welcome back, heroes, to another episode of Old Men. Oh, I blew it. No Comics for Old Men.
No comics for old men.
No comics for old men. No comics for old men. No comics for old men. No comics for old men. No comics for old men. No comics for old men. No comics for old men. No comics for old men. No comics for old men. No comics for old men. No comics for old men. No comics from old men. No comics for old men. No comics for old men. Welcome to No Comics for Old Men. And there actually are no comics for no men. No new comics. 2 weeks, 3 weeks in a row. I don't know. I've lost track. I still work. I have a real job that's essential, and so I'm still working, but my passion, my love, comics, is grinded to a halt. And there's a lot of videos on the state of comics, what's happening, what's going on, what are we going to do, what are we not going to do. And, sit tight. A lot of people are just trying to get clickbait, trying to get videos watched. Comics Hub, when it came out, there was videos the day it was announced, and then videos the next day. Oh wait, it's not happening. So the number one thing with comics is infrastructure, right? There's one infrastructure. There's no other way to order except from like independents like Alterna. I can go direct to Alterna and I can order their books direct and they'll ship them to me. They even have a free shipping if you reach a certain amount, which is, or not free shipping, it's flat rate, $5. AlternaAccess.com. And they're starting to do digital comics. And I'm a fan of their model. They're a little Comicsgate leaning for me, really, but they put out a good product, and I think they've got a good business model. But we're talking about the big three. Big four, if you want to include Dark Horse, who's kind of teetering. A lot of these small publishers, the margins are very thin. Like, people see the comic book movies and like the big comic conventions, and they're like, oh, comics are you're rich if you're in it's not. It's a very middle class profession to be a comic artist or writer. There are places where you can make a lot of money if you own the intellectual property in the independent world. If you've worked for Marvel or DC, there's a very, very small percentage you get for the character you created if they end up on the screen. It's tiny. And then, you're one of the last to get paid. So like they pay everybody first. And then out of the profits, what's left, you get your little itty bitty 0.5% or 1.5%. I don't know what the largest deal is for a creator, how much they get. But it's a lot of their time and their effort and their creativity, which makes you buy the books, which makes you go to the movies. Then they get a very small return. And now that comics have stopped, and they've actually just announced, I think today or yesterday was it today? That Diamond Comics has furloughed all the rest of their workers that had still been on the payroll from home. So it looks like we're not even be able to get anything that they have in stock going forward. The word has been that comics may not start back up till August, and that's a long time. So let's talk about some stuff you should have read. Here's some stuff I got out. I just grabbed some real quick because I wasn't prepared. Got some trade paperbacks in the back from Sean Lewis, 3 of his books. I would have had the few up there too, but I'm sold out. I think they're almost sold out at Amazon also. So they've been selling through pretty well. I know trade paperbacks are doing really well. Usually we have a great sale on them. Buy 2, get 35% off. If you contact us through Facebook, we'll ship them to you. But here's some older stuff from our independent bin. These over here would be dollar books, and the Grimm Grimjack would also be dollar books, but fantastic reads and great art. Mr. Monster, it's kind of a parody horror book. It's not very scary. It's kind of fun. He's kind of a pulp fiction character. Just love that book. And the art is, very different from anything else. Judge Dredd, everybody knows Judge Dredd. You've seen probably both the movies. But the comics were also very good, and the art is crazy and fun and different, being out of the UK. If you've seen foreign comics, their art styles are very different. It kind of really tells the kind of cultural differences we have with the people around the world. But another great fun book. Chad's just hanging out, wearing his mask. He hasn't learned social distancing yet, but at least he's got a mask on. How you doing, Chad? Yeah, he's an introvert. What do we got over here? Grimjack. So this is another good book. There was rumors that this was actually going to come to television. We'll see. Maybe. I touched my face. Sorry, you shouldn't do that. Again, these are all books from the 80s that I grew up with. Yes, I'm not that old. I was a kid in the 80s, not the 70s or 60s, like some people think. But yeah, this is another good, a space pirate book. It's fun. It's a great book. Then one of my favorites when I was a kid. I've talked about this book before. Oh, there goes Bizarro. Sorry, Bizarro. John Sable. This is written by Mike Grell. And I found it. This is the one I got signed by Mike Grell when I was 12 years old at Mile High Comics in Denver. Mike Grell did John Sable. A little quick story about that is I told you before, I was hanging out in a comic store, Mile High Comics in Denver, Colorado, and I was reading this book. It was mercenaries and spies, and it really tickled my fancy. I loved it a lot. And one day they had in their shop Mike Grell, and he signed that book for me. I no longer have it. So if you know anybody that has 2 Emmet from Mike Grell on the inside lower cover, send me a message because I'd like to buy it back. Yeah, he's a mercenary for hire, and he's goes to Africa. It's one of those he's an anti-hero, but he only works for good. Sort of like A-Team, but only one guy because he's that badass. This was a good book. It was a television show. You might be able to find it on YouTube. I don't think it ever made it to VHS or DVD. But try and find it. John Sable was, I want to say it was early cable television show. Was it on ABC or NBC? I can't even remember. It actually wasn't that bad. It wasn't that close to the comic. It was basically just his name and that he was a mercenary. I don't think they used actually any of the scripts. But this is one of the guys, we've talked about him before in our show, Mike Grell, who does the art and the writing and is very solid at both. And you should go back out and find all his books and buy them because he's great. But as far as comic books going forward, I think Independence probably will be up and running before Marvel and DC. Just because as soon as the printers are available, their distribution is done in a different model. They're small distributors. Shout out to Roland, our friend who has his own small distribution for comics. So they'll be able to find ways to get their books to comic stores. For me, it's not about the distribution. It's really about the ordering process. Now, I've ordered my comics for June. I put my order in already. So that's how far out in advance we have to order our comics. I'm already ordered up through June. But when will we get them? My suggestion is that they just freeze everything. They don't cancel anything that's already been in the previews book. When we open back up, just send us the books that we were due the first week we missed. Then the books we were due the second week we missed. It's just going to shift everything back. This whole restructuring, canceling books, you're just going to confuse your readership. They're all going to be waiting for that next issue that they had on their subscription, right? So send them the next issue that they're due. Then They did leave ordering open so that we actually could lower our numbers or raise our numbers, whatever we wanted to do with our numbers in buying books. I suggest you just keep the numbers you had. Don't lower your numbers. Yeah, I know everybody's hurting, but everybody's gone on to online. Even we're doing a little bit online. Luckily, we're in a pretty good spot, so we'll be good for a while. I don't know if, they're talking about mid-June, July, it's going to start to get a little, little tough. But you know what? Keep reading comics. That's it. Just read comics. Don't collect them. Read them. Then pass them on to somebody else who wants to read them. 3436 Front Street, Port Jervis, New York. I'm out.